Thomas Edison was not a vegan, okay? But he said something really, really important. The chief function of the body is to carry the brain around. And so, really, if we understand our consciousness is extremely important, and then when we have a healthy body, it supports our consciousness. Now, as I've been doing research with this, I work also as an orthomolecular psychiatrist as well as a holistic physician, and I do a lot of supporting people's neurotransmitter development because under stress, people diminish in their neurotransmitters significantly. But what I discovered with the vegan live food diet is it actually enhanced all the neurotransmitters and brought it into balance. And that was like interesting. I wrote a book called Depression Free for Life. And I was like, what? Ooh, all these different ways of looking at things. And it's like, my goodness, okay, if we just do the live food, and it's not as fast as supplements, but it works. It may take a year or two versus supplements may take 3 months, but it works. And the principle is a live food vegan diet over a period of time will rebalance all your neurotransmitters and increase the ones that need to be increased and decrease the ones that are in excess. So when we're eating this way and living this kind of way, we're doing the chief function of the body, which is to carry the brain around. Next slide, please. So diet affects consciousness because you have to have a functioning mind. It affects our thoughts. It affects our actions. So very clearly, what I'm saying is that when we have a healthy body, we have more balanced emotions, we have a more balanced mind, and ultimately, we have the expansion of consciousness, which is part of the talk that we're talking about, is spiritual nutrition. How to eat in a way to become a superconductor of the divine. It seems simple, but it takes a while to get there. Next slide, please. So, it also has to do with appreciating that food is a love note from God. So it's a whole consciousness. So when we're eating, we're not gobbling. Okay, we're not a bunch of turkeys here. We're not gobbling. Each bite is releasing a certain amount of spiritual energy as well as caloric energy. And when we're eating with that consciousness, we're in essence taking in the sacred, we're making eating a sacred act. That's what we're doing. And we're taking in the spiritual energy of the food. And that's important. Now, is this again new idea? Well, it's my kind of statement, but we know what the Buddha taught, and we know what some of the ancient teachers taught, which again, when you go vegan, you're not taking in the animal ego consciousness. And so you're also, one of my teachers, Swami Prakashananda, said, when we kill an animal, we create pain, fear, and misery. And when we eat that animal, the flesh, we're taking pain, fear, and misery into us. And I just take it a step further, and that blocks all levels of our body, our physical body, our subtle bodies, our spiritual bodies, our soul energy. It blocks all that. Now, it doesn't totally block it, but it decreases the flow. I noticed this because in a very practical way, because all this is practical, back in 1975, given my background, Swami Muktananda, we had kind of a traveling ashram, a few thousand people. And I noticed, and then wherever we went, we saw people. I noticed that people who had too much energy going began to eat meat. I said, why is that? You're not supposed to be doing that in this. And the reason is, they said, it helps slow the energy. It helps dampen the energy. So clinically speaking, people are telling me meat slows the energy. So it's not a theoretical thing. I saw it from my clinical experience. So yes, if there's too much energy you can't handle, I'm not recommending it. There's better ways to do it, but that's what people were choosing. And I learned from that. And on the other hand, a vegan live food diet acts as a amplifier of the spiritual energy, an amplifier of the kundalini. And now I'll explain, and I'm going to explain it again another way, that we have what are called nadis, or energetic channels in us, kind of like meridians, but they're not quite the same, but similar. And there's three main channels, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Now, why is that important? Because those are the main channels through which the spiritual energy flows. And I began to observe again, if people had more energy than they could handle, they would meat, fish, chicken, and dairy would act as a sludge to this flow of the spiritual energy called Kundalini. It's like, wow, that was a huge lesson, just observing what people did. That impressed me. So on the other hand, the live food diet enhances the flow because it has no obstacles. Okay, so that's the key concept. So in these 72,000 nadis with three main ones, it unblocks the flow of the energy. So it amplifies it in people. Next slide, please. So how does it all work? Well, what I saw when people did live food vegan diet, at 87%, we did a study of about 300 people, one of my master's students, and we saw 87% improvement in emotional balance, mental clarity, and spiritual inspiration. Now, just think about that. And my own research, I saw actually at 95%, but I'm just kind of going with what this person did with a sample of 300 people. 400% decrease in depression. Now, remember what I said. When you're eating this natural way, you're balancing and raising all your neurotransmitters. And the neurotransmitters are, serotonin, dopamine, pleasure centers. They naturally help depression and anxiety go away. So we have a 400% decrease in depression, a 300% decrease in anxiety. I mean, that's huge. And it's not temporary. If you kind of look at antidepressants, which are associated, some of them with up to 4 times the amount of suicide, they don't tell you that. But when I was a resident in psychiatry, because of my background in biochemistry, I actually began teaching psychopharmacology. That's a long time ago. Okay, I don't use any of those now. Because why? If I can get a 400% decrease in depression in a life from that, why would I want to take an antidepressant that can actually make you suicidal or only last, if it works, for 6 to 8 weeks? It's 300% decrease in anxiety, 32% decrease in addiction. Now, I want to say that I see a much higher result with the decrease in addiction because addiction has to do with a deficient dopamine. Why? What's dopamine have to do with it? It activates the pleasure centers. And people who are addicted to drugs, they're needing the drugs to activate their pleasure centers, although they activate less and less and less over time. So I see that this helps tremendous amount in breaking through with addictions. And what I also see, we're still doing fasting retreats over the internet, kind of international fasting retreats, that between 5 and 7 days on a green juice fast, half diluted, pretty much people break their addictions. And that's the easy way to go about it. Because the addictions kind of move out of the body. And what I'm talking about is the biochemical part of the addiction. Not so much the mental part, but the biochemical, physical addiction level is usually carried in 5 to 7 days. So I get a very high percentage when I'm doing people with the juice fast. We're supervising a group juice fast around the world. I think our next one is in August. So it works. I've just seen consistently it works. And then a 300% increase in good to excellent energy levels. That's what we're talking about with being able to do 2,000 push-ups. Okay, an improvement in the immune system. That's colds, flus. When we really look at, the kind of viral things that are going on today without mentioning names, the key is what we call the terrain, which is your basic level of immune system function. That's the most important thing. And that was really a breakthrough in the 1880s. Louis Pasteur said one bacteria, one virus, one disease. And the other people said, no, the terrain, your general health. Anton Beauchamp, who had lots of MDs and PhDs, their position is, no, your quality of health is what really protects you. But that's why they call it terrain. That's why in today's world, the most important thing we can do is build the terrain. And when you're really healthy, you see a lot less people getting sick from a variety of things. I'll just put it that way. Next slide, please. Okay, chronic disease. Now, the lady before talked about all the difficulties kids have, and I would say there's a statistic from 1989. At that point, kids, and I have 3 grandchildren, and in this process. In 1989, only 12% of kids were having ADD and things like that. Now it's close to 50% now. And I really don't mean ADD only, but chronic disease. About 50% of kids, believe it or not, since the vaccinations and other things in 1989 till now, are now having chronic disease. This is preventable and somewhat reversible. But I don't want to make claims here. The woman that did this research, one of the things that was in her mind is menstrual comfort. And she particularly was acute with that. And she was saying, well, it's a 200% decrease in menstrual discomfort. Okay. Wow. And I find that, it's like, if you're having, trouble with menstrual, let's do something simple like start fasting, go to live foods and see what happens. And I think that's pretty accurate, a 200% increase in menstrual discomfort. We say it in a positive way. Significant decrease in constipation. We know that cooked food really takes much longer time to get through the gastrointestinal tract. But the live vegan food goes through the fastest. And therefore, it sounds like a lot, 18,000% decrease in laxatives. Basically, you don't need laxatives. And a 20-fold decrease in antacid use. And that's because the stomach is beginning to function right. The trick to understanding antacids is that people who are feeling acid is because they don't have enough acid. So how does that work? Well, when you have enough acid, you'll have the emptying of what we call the pyloric valve, which is the bottom of the stomach, okay? Enough acid, boom, it opens, food goes through. But not enough acid, and it comes back up, and you get that acid indigestion. So when you're doing live food and you're eating less and you're system is being stimulated, you actually increase your acid production. So at this age, most people start on digestive enzymes when they're in their 40s, 45. I stopped using digestive enzymes about 10 years ago. So it makes you stronger. I actually didn't believe it, but okay, we're all our own experiments. So it's like, great, let's stop digestive enzymes. Because I always thought everybody should take digestive enzymes. So what I found is you need them. So over time, again, the body gets stronger. The powers of digestion get stronger. And I'm talking about hydrochloric acid and general digestive enzymes. That's what I'm talking about. If our senses get more tuned in, Dr. Breckman in Russia did this really good research with mice, and he found a 200% increase in energy levels. He's now, I believe, in Canada. But there we go again. See, it's not just your psyche, because it's mice. And so he found that they just had increased energy.